A strange thing happened the other day and I thought I'd make a video about it. Something is being spread and widely said to be a scam, which I really don't think is a scam at all. But the process of coming to the realization that it wasn't a scam was quite interesting, and it also revealed something about a modern world in which by default we assume Google to be gospel. And in some circumstances that information can become the dominant information in a given situation. Even questioning the information may yield a challenge by the person that you're challenging in the form of a screen grab of Google itself, of a page of results from Google. And I found this really interesting. I think this situation has been coming for a really long time. Indeed, it may have actually been the situation for a really long time. But this whole situation really brought that home to me, that it's possible for a collection of false information to become self-confirming because of Google. The purpose of this video is twofold. The first is to try and debunk this specific scam, show it to be the hoax that it is, and show in detail my reasons for thinking it was almost certainly a scam. And in a way, since showing how I've worked it out is probably the best way to convince people that it is really not a scam, it's genuine. The second purpose is to try and show some techniques, both practical, using tools and information, and also mental, using rational thought processes, just for evaluating whether something is what it seems to be or not. A bit of a mini lesson in critical thinking, and with some very basic OSINT thrown in, just for good measure. Many people on social media have shared a letter from HMRC, claiming to be from HMRC, which is a bit like the UK's equivalent of the IRS. And the letter is in every case received by post, usually in a brown envelope, properly printed, professionally done. And the letter makes a claim about unpaid money that's owed. And typically it's PAYE or national insurance payments or something like that. And in every case that I could find, the letter was said to be a scam by the person posting it on social media. In other words, basically, you can ignore this, it's a scam, but watch out because it might happen to you as well. On the face of it, it does seem like quite a plausible scam. You send out 1 million letters to people who might be a bit gullible, and you tell them that they all owe some money in tax, and a certain percentage, probably quite a small percentage, but enough to make the scam potentially profitable, pay the money to make it go away because they're frightened. And certainly there have been many scams like this, the supplier scam, where a fake supplier sends an invoice, an overdue invoice to a company, and sometimes to avoid the threat of court action or something, the company will just pay the invoice, and it turns out not to be genuine. So it's kind of right to be suspicious of letters that appear to be demanding money. But why is it almost certainly not a scam? Well, there's a few reasons. Aside from the fact that it always arrived by post, the first thing about this that caught my eye was that the web address on all these letters is gov.uk, which is the official web address of the UK government. You can't really spoof that. And since it's a printed communication, it's not even like the label on the link could be different from the actual address that the link points to, as you might see in some scam emails. Like, this is a physical paper letter printed in ink, put in an envelope, and it's inviting the user to type gov.uk into their web browser. Now, there's no way to inject a fake URL here. So the web address is genuine. And the second thing I started to wonder was, could the phone number be one which, rather than connecting you to HMRC, actually connected you to a scammer who would then, take your money by credit card over the phone. And there are a few problems with this. Firstly, the number in all the letters is an 0300 number. Although this sort of isn't widely known, 0300 is a range of numbers specifically reserved for government, public sector, not-for-profit and registered charity entities. They're commonly used by government departments such as HMRC, of course, DVLA, Ofcom, and others. And some charities use them as well. And in my personal experience, enforcement on these numbers when they're used by entities who aren't really entitled to use them is very swift and very decisive. I know this because some years ago I spotted a psychic hotline somehow using one of these 0300 numbers, and I reported it to Ofcom, and by the end of the same day that number was discontinued. They were having to use a different number for their psychic hotline. So I can be pretty confident that mostly people who are using these numbers are genuine, or if they're not genuine, they are shut down fast. There is a PDF on Ofcom's website which clearly details who is and who is not entitled to use such numbers. So the next thing I did was to have a look at who was actually hosting the number block. So the number, if you remember, was 0300 200 something. And this would be the telco, the telecommunications company, who basically for all the calls that are made to that number, who those calls are routed to. And there are many small, sometimes VoIP type providers who maybe don't do a high level of checking on some new customer accounts. Essentially, if you've got a credit card and a name, you can set up an account and be allocated a number almost immediately. And of course, the credit card could be stolen. So I wanted to see if the number was allocated by one of those little new upstart providers who perhaps don't do their due diligence very thoroughly. But using the AQL telephone number lookup tool, and this is a tool put out by a company called AQL just for the general public to use, but it relies on information that's also published in spreadsheets by Ofcom. So if you want to manually go through spreadsheets, you can do that. It's much quicker to use the AQL checker. It shows that 0300 200 block is in fact allocated to old massive telco Vodafone. Well, I'm not sure Vodafone even sells VoIP numbers to the general public on their website. I'm pretty confident they don't, less still an 0300. I strongly suspect that Vodafone does a very high level of due diligence about who is applying for these kind of special range of numbers. And what about other numbers on the same block? So, we're pretty confident now that it's a reputable telco, an old school telco. What about other numbers? Well, it turns out that if you look on HMRC's website, they actually also publish 0300 200, 3500, 3300, 3200. So there are loads of examples published on HMRC's official website of other numbers in the same block, which again adds a bit more to the probability that this is a legitimate number for HMRC. Makes me think that 3819 really almost certainly is real. And then a little bit of a search on Twitter. So HMRC has an official customer service Twitter account, and first of all I found a tweet where that account confirmed that 3814 was said to be a helpline. Well, 3814 is only 5 numbers away from 3819, so that's even closer. And finally, I found 2 confirmations of either a letter with that number on it being confirmed as genuine by that Twitter account, or indeed the number itself. There are a few tweets where clearly an official from HMRC confirms that number is genuine and connects to HMRC. And then just for belt and braces, I thought, well, how do I know that this Twitter account really is HMRC. After all, it doesn't have a golden check mark or a silver check mark anymore. So what I did was went to the HMRC pages for social media on gov.uk, and sure enough, the Twitter account calling itself HMRC Customers is indeed one operated by HMRC themselves and not some other part of an elaborate scam. So there we have it. An official at HMRC confirms the letter is genuine, confirms the number is genuine, and as far as I'm concerned, that's game, set and match. These letters, wrong though many of them may be, or sort of wrong though many of them may be, are actually genuine. They're not a scam, and you really, really should not ignore them. So there you have it. I think game, set and match, really. The letters are genuine. They might be misplaced or wrong, maybe. HMRC may have made a mistake, or something may have happened automatically that these people are not aware of, but it's not a scam. These letters, certainly in the form we've seen, are not a scam, in my view. Please do tell me in the comments if you think I'm wrong. I'd totally be prepared to listen to a evidence-based argument, and I would definitely publish a revision to this video or post something into the description underneath if it turns out I'm wrong. But I really don't think I am, and I think, I can show my reasons for thinking that. But finally, I sort of want to talk a bit about how you judge an alleged scam's likelihood of being a scam and not a hoax. And a good way is to assess what is the vector. How does this make money for the scammer? Because ultimately, that is always the point of a scam, is to make money for the people operating it. And, instantly I was kind of in slight disbelief by the fact this was a posted item. That costs post and print and ink and everything else. That's got to be, compared to email or another vector, a nightmare as far as becoming profitable for the scammer is concerned. So that was the first thing that sort of tipped me off that it may be genuine and not a scam. And then if the web address is genuine and the phone number is genuine, well, how would they make money out of that? And so before I'd seen the later pages of the letter, which I have now seen, I thought there might be bank details on a later page. But then once I saw the later pages, there were no bank details, so even that avenue is closed off. Many hoaxes are not explicitly harmful in their untruth. In other words, a person can sort of reason when they're spreading this type of stuff that, well, if it is true and it is a real scam, they're helping people. But if it's not true, well, where's the harm? Well, in this case, there is harm, because if someone is not taking action to resolve a real problem, even if it's not one of their making, their delay in sorting that out may be making matters worse. Potentially. It's a bit like whenever someone posts on Facebook that they've got a parking fine in a shopping centre car park, there's always a sea of people ready to say just ignore it, these fines aren't enforceable, and that's absolutely the worst advice in that situation. I think there's just a slight possibility that HMRC does something where it automatically enrolls dormant companies or new-ish companies into PAYE to make sure that no one gets missed. And they basically expect people to call in and unregister if it's irrelevant for their company or not appropriate. And the way they do that is just auto-enroll everybody. It's something like that. I'm not an accountant, but I think that's part of the reason why so many of these letters seem to arrive and be mistaken for a scam. I've now directly challenged this 3 or more times because I kind of believe it's important to try and help people get the right situation at the end, get the correct information and sort out whatever the problem is if they can. But it's surprising to me how sort of unwelcome a challenge of this sort of thing is, even with evidence and no matter how politely you make your challenge. Here's one reply when I politely pointed out my doubts. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, I actually run a telco. There is not software out there to mimic genuine company phone numbers for use in this way. Yes, caller ID spoofing, where a call appears to come from a party other than the actual owner of the number, but with the genuine owner of the number's caller ID present, is a thing. It absolutely does exist, but no software exists that enables somehow phone calls to be received on someone else's number. That's just not a thing. And this was the next response that I got when I gently put forward my view that it was a hoax, not a scam. Firstly, the idea that I wouldn't have done that for myself is a little bit surprising and disappointing. And sure enough, if you tap that number into Google, a whole lot of results do suggest that this is a scam. But people forget that Google isn't an information source in and of itself. It's just simply an index of other information resources, some or many, or in this case pretty much all of which can be nonsense. And unfortunately, the fact that they're indexed on Google adds a sort of faux legitimacy to the information that's there. People are very inclined to believe it because they found it on Google, which seems to be interesting but concerning. Several accountancy firms are amongst the links on the first page of Google results when you search for this number, basically saying that it's a scam. And of course that adds credibility to the hoax. Now, of course, it may be there were other genuine scams, not hoax scams, operating using slightly different vectors, but using the same sorts of number. But I can't find them, and in any case, I think a lot of people are persuaded by this set of results. So it's not good. And I also found, in one case on the UK business forums, the title, quote, "Very, very realistic HMRC scam letter," would give you a strong belief that it was a scam, but then if you actually clicked on the link and read what people were saying, there was at least one post, one responder saying the letters are genuine. So this is a bit like a 21st century version of judging a book by its cover, which is never a good thing. It feels odd in this age of fake news to be surprised by this. I'm surprised that I'm surprised. But I really was genuinely surprised. And a whole lot of people are believing something that isn't a scam is a scam. And their views are being heavily influenced by a set of Google results put there by people who in many cases failed to do any real due diligence at all, failed to apply basic critical thought to the situation, but went ahead and published anyway. And then that poisoned the quality of the information for everyone. And now, finding Google results are now being used as supporting evidence for the thing that isn't true in the first place. Again, I'm surprised that I'm surprised, but I am, so there it is. I feel I ought to do a bit of a PSA at the end of this. Just because I don't think this one is a scam, and again, correct me if you think I'm wrong, doesn't mean that all letters claiming to be HMRC are not scams. Many of them might be. I definitely wouldn't rule that out. So it's really important that you do your own research, make a judgment for yourself using the best available information. And that doesn't mean just Googling it and pasting a screenshot of Google. If you're in any doubt, contact the agency or company that's contacting you on a number they publish on their official website and ask them about it. And keep a note of when you called them. If you do see this scam hoax being spread, why not stop it by sharing a link straight to this video? Rather than simply relying on the first page of Google results, hopefully some people might look at this video and believe, because I've shown how I worked it out, that it's not a scam, and maybe even contact HMRC and sort whatever the problem is out, either via their social media or by phone. Fingers crossed. If you found this video useful or at least interesting, please go ahead and like, subscribe, comment and share. And hopefully we can stamp out this nonsense.